Karoline Leavitt walked into the Riverside County Courthouse on a Tuesday morning in March. She wore a simple blue dress and a white head covering that she had worn every day for the past 3 years. The 28-year-old woman worked as a legal assistant at a small law firm downtown. She never thought this day would change her life forever. The courthouse was busy that morning. People in suits walked quickly through the marble hallways. Lawyers carried thick folders and talked on their phones. Karoline found courtroom number 7 and sat in the back row. She was there because she had been called for contempt of court. Last week she had spoken out during a hearing when she saw the judge treat an elderly man badly. The judge did not like what she said. Judge Harold Martinez was known around the courthouse as a tough man. He had been a judge for 15 years. Some lawyers were afraid of him. Others said he was unfair to people who were different from him. Karoline had heard these stories, but she had never been in his courtroom before. The courtroom was full that day. About 40 people sat in the wooden benches. There were lawyers, family members of people in trouble, and court workers. In the front row sat Lisa Campbell, a lawyer who came to support Karoline. Lisa had worked in the courthouse for 10 years and knew Judge Martinez well. When Karoline's name was called, she walked to the front of the courtroom. Her heart was beating fast. Judge Martinez looked at her from his high chair behind the big wooden desk. He was a heavy man with gray hair and cold eyes. He did not smile. "Miss Leavitt," Judge Martinez said in a loud voice, "you are here because you spoke out of turn in my courtroom last week. Do you understand why that was wrong?" Karoline stood straight and looked at the judge. "Your Honor, I spoke because I saw something that was not right. The old man needed help, and no one was helping him." Judge Martinez's face turned red. "You do not decide what is right in my courtroom. I do. Now, before we continue, you need to remove that thing from your head." Karoline touched her white head covering. She had started wearing it 3 years ago when she became religious. It was important to her faith. "Your Honor, this is my religious head covering. I have the right to wear it." "Not in my courtroom, you don't," Judge Martinez said, standing up. "Take it off now or I will hold you in contempt again." Lisa Campbell stood up quickly. "Your Honor, my client has the constitutional right to wear religious clothing. You cannot force her to remove it." Judge Martinez looked angry. His hands were shaking. "Sit down, counselor. This is my courtroom and I make the rules here." The people in the courtroom were watching quietly. Nancy Price, the court reporter, stopped typing and stared. Jake Williams, a prosecutor who was waiting for his case, looked shocked. Helen Brooks, who had worked as a court clerk for 30 years, had never seen anything like this. "I will not remove my head covering," Karoline said in a clear voice. "It is part of my religious faith." Judge Martinez walked down from his chair. He moved like a man who was very angry. "Bailiff Peterson," he called to the security guard, "go to my office and bring me the hair clippers from my desk drawer." Everyone in the courtroom looked at each other. Lisa Campbell jumped up. "Your Honor, you cannot be serious. This is against the law." "I am very serious," Judge Martinez said. "If she will not remove it herself, then I will remove it for her." Bailiff Peterson was a young man who had worked at the courthouse for only 6 months. He looked confused and scared. "Judge, I don't think this is right." "Do what I tell you or you will be looking for a new job," Judge Martinez said. Peterson left the courtroom and came back 2 minutes later with electric hair clippers. His hands were shaking as he gave them to the judge. Karoline felt afraid. For the first time. "You cannot do this to me. I have rights." "You gave up your rights when you disrespected my courtroom," Judge Martinez said. He plugged in the clippers. The electric buzz filled the quiet room. Lisa Campbell was on her phone, trying to call someone for help. "I am calling the state court administration right now." Judge Martinez did not care. "Bailiff Peterson, hold her arms. Bailiff Johnson, hold her other side." The 2 security guards looked at each other. They did not want to do this, but they were afraid of losing their jobs. They slowly moved toward Karoline. "Please don't do this," Karoline said. Tears started to fall from her eyes. "This is not right." But Judge Martinez had already made up his mind. The two bailiffs held Karoline's arms while she tried to pull away. People in the courtroom started to stand up. Some were taking pictures with their phones. Others looked away because they could not watch. Judge Martinez turned on the clippers and grabbed Karoline's head covering. He pulled it off and threw it on the floor. Karoline's long brown hair fell down her back. She had beautiful hair that reached almost to her waist. "Stop this right now," Lisa Campbell shouted, but it was too late. Judge Martinez began cutting Karoline's hair with the clippers. Big pieces of brown hair fell to the marble floor. Karoline was crying and trying to get away, but the bailiffs held her tight. The sound of the clippers was loud in the silent courtroom. It took about 5 minutes. When Judge Martinez was finished, Karoline's head was almost completely bald. She looked like a different person. Her hair was scattered all around her feet on the courtroom floor. "There," Judge Martinez said, breathing hard. "Now you look proper for my courtroom." Karoline stood there with tears running down her face. She reached up and touched her bald head. She felt cold and scared and angry all at the same time. Helen Brooks, the old court clerk, started to cry. She had seen many things in 30 years, but nothing like this. Nancy Price, the court reporter, was shaking so much she could not type. Judge Martinez sat back down at his desk like nothing had happened. "Now, Miss Leavitt, do you understand that you must respect this court?" Karoline looked up at him. Her tears had stopped. Her eyes were different now. They were hard and cold. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand everything now." "Good. You are sentenced to community service and a fine of $500. This court is dismissed." As people started to leave the courtroom, Karoline bent down and picked up her white head covering from the floor. She put it over her bald head and walked out of the courtroom with her back straight. Lisa Campbell walked beside her. "Karoline, we are going to sue them. This was illegal. We will make them pay for what they did." But Karoline was not thinking about lawsuits. She was thinking about something else. Something that would take much longer but would be much more satisfying. As she walked out of the courthouse, she was already making plans. Judge Harold Martinez had no idea what was coming for him. 3 months passed after the terrible day in Judge Martinez's courtroom. Karoline Leavitt's hair had started to grow back, but it was still very short. She wore colorful scarves to cover her head now. But the biggest change was not on the outside. The biggest change was inside her mind. Karoline had quit her job at the law firm. She could not focus on regular work anymore. All she could think about was Judge Martinez and what he had done to her. She spent her days in the public library, reading law books and court records. She had a plan, but it was not the kind of plan most people would think of. She was not going to sue Judge Martinez in court. Other people had already tried that with him before and nothing happened. The system protected judges like him. Karoline was going to do something different. She was going to find out all of his secrets and use them against him. Danny Rodriguez was a private investigator who worked in a small office above a pizza shop. He was a thin man with kind eyes who had been in the courtroom that terrible day. He had watched Judge Martinez cut off Karoline's hair, and he had never forgotten it. When Karoline came to his office and asked for help, he said yes right away. "I will help you for free," Danny told her. What that judge did was wrong, very wrong. Danny had been a private investigator for 12 years. He knew how to find information about people. He taught Karoline how to look up court records, how to find old newspaper stories, and how to talk to people who might know secrets. "The first thing we need to do is find other people who were hurt by Judge Martinez," Danny said. "Bad judges usually have a pattern. They do bad things more than once." Karoline and Danny started visiting people who had been in Judge Martinez's courtroom over the past 15 years. They found many stories that made them angry. Mary Thompson was a 45-year-old teacher who had been called to court for a traffic ticket. She wore jeans to court because she did not know she needed to dress up. Judge Martinez got so angry that he put her in jail for 3 days. She lost her job because she could not go to work. I tried to explain that no one told me about a dress code, Mary said, crying as she remembered. But he would not listen. He said I was disrespecting his court. 3 days in jail for wearing jeans. Robert Chen was an 80-year-old man who had sued a company that cheated him out of his retirement money. Judge Martinez did not like his accent and dismissed his case without even listening to the evidence. He said he could not understand me, Robert said. But I speak English fine. I have lived in America for 50 years. He just did not want to help an old Chinese man. Patricia Davis was a court stenographer who had worked in the courthouse for 8 years. She had seen Judge Martinez do many bad things, but she was afraid to report him because she needed her job. When Karoline and Danny came to talk to her, she decided to help them secretly. I have been keeping copies of transcripts from his worst cases, Patricia whispered when they met at a coffee shop far from the courthouse. I knew someone would need them someday. Patricia had boxes of court transcripts that showed Judge Martinez being mean to women, minorities, and poor people. She also had recordings of him saying terrible things when he thought no one was listening. He calls women stupid. He makes jokes about people's accents. He laughs when poor people cannot afford lawyers, Patricia said. I have it all written down. But the more Karoline and Danny investigated, the more they found that Judge Martinez's crimes were bigger than just being mean in court. They discovered he was taking money from people who wanted him to make decisions in their favor. Vincent Walsh owned a construction company that built houses and office buildings. He had been in Judge Martinez's court many times over the past 5 years. Every time someone sued his company for doing bad work, Judge Martinez ruled in his favor. Danny found out that Vincent Walsh had been giving Judge Martinez money and expensive gifts. Look at this, Danny said, showing Karoline bank records he had gotten from a friend who worked at the bank. Judge Martinez gets a deposit of $5,000 every month from a company called VW Construction. That is Vincent Walsh's company. They also found out that Judge Martinez was having an affair with Amanda Foster, a prosecutor who worked in the courthouse. Amanda had been giving him information about criminal cases so he would know how to rule before the trials even started. This is how he always seems to know everything before it happens in court, Karoline said. She tells him the secrets about every case. Karoline spent her days following Judge Martinez and watching his daily routine. She learned that he ate lunch at the same restaurant every day. He played golf every Saturday morning. He went to a bar called Murphy's Tavern every Friday night. At Murphy's Tavern, Judge Martinez drank beer and talked to his friends about his cases. He bragged about how he could do whatever he wanted because no one could stop him. Karoline sat in a corner booth and listened to every word. I am the king of my courtroom, she heard him say one Friday night. These people come in there thinking they have rights, but I decide what rights they have. Danny taught Karoline how to use a small recording device. She started recording Judge Martinez when he said these things. She also took pictures of him meeting with Vincent Walsh and other people who were giving him money. After 2 months of investigation, Karoline and Danny had collected enough evidence to prove that Judge Martinez was corrupt. But Karoline was not ready to use it yet. She wanted to make sure her revenge would be perfect. We need to find more people he has hurt, she told Danny. And we need to find out who is protecting him. A judge cannot do all these bad things for 15 years without someone helping him. They discovered that Judge Martinez's brother-in-law, Tony Martinez, was a police captain. Tony had been covering up complaints against the judge and threatening people who tried to report him. They also found out that Judge Martinez owed money to some very dangerous people. He had gambling debts to Frank Castellano, a crime boss who controlled illegal activities in the city. Frank was using the judge to make legal problems disappear for his criminal friends. This is bigger than we thought, Danny said. Judge Martinez is not just corrupt. He is part of a whole network of corruption. But Karoline was not scared. She was excited. The bigger the corruption, the bigger her revenge would be. She spent every day planning and gathering more evidence. She knew that when she was ready to strike, she would destroy not just Judge Martinez, but everyone who had helped him hurt innocent people. Soon, she said to herself, as she looked at all the evidence she had collected. Very soon, Judge Martinez will pay for what he did to me and to all the others. Karoline Leavitt's investigation was getting bigger and more dangerous every day. She had spent 4 months collecting evidence against Judge Martinez, and now she had proof that he was taking bribes and breaking the law. But she needed help from people with more power than she had. Kevin Murphy was a newspaper reporter who worked for the Riverside Tribune. He had been writing stories about crime and corruption in the city for 10 years. When Karoline called him and said she had evidence of judicial corruption, he agreed to meet her at a small diner outside of town. "I have been hearing rumors about Judge Martinez for years," Kevin said as he looked through the folders of evidence that Karoline brought. "But I never had proof like this." Kevin studied the bank records showing payments from Vincent Walsh to Judge Martinez. He listened to the audio recordings of the judge bragging about his power. He read the court transcripts that showed the judge being unfair to people because of their race or gender. "This is incredible," Kevin said. "If this is all true, it will be the biggest corruption story in the county's history." "It is all true," Karoline said, "and there is more. Judge Martinez is connected to organized crime through his gambling debts." Kevin was excited but also worried. "If we publish this story, they will try to stop us. Corrupt judges have powerful friends." But Karoline was not afraid anymore. "Let them try. I have nothing left to lose." While Kevin was checking the evidence and writing his story, Karoline got an unexpected visitor. Maria Santos was an FBI special agent who had been investigating corruption in the local court system for 2 years. She came to Karoline's apartment one evening and showed her FBI identification. "Miss Leavitt, I have been watching your investigation," Maria said. "You have been doing excellent work." Karoline was surprised. "How do you know about my investigation?" "The FBI has been trying to build a case against Judge Martinez and his associates for a long time," Maria explained. "But we needed someone on the inside to help us gather evidence. You have collected more proof in 4 months than we gathered in 2 years." Maria told Karoline that the FBI had been watching Judge Martinez, Vincent Walsh, and Frank Castellano for a long time. They knew about the bribes and the connections to organized crime, but they needed solid evidence that would hold up in court. "Your recordings and documents are exactly what we need," Maria said. "But you need to be very careful. These people will not hesitate to hurt you if they think you are a threat." Maria was right to warn Karoline. Judge Martinez had started to notice that people were asking questions about him. His brother-in-law, Police Captain Tony Martinez, told him that someone was investigating his past cases and talking to his victims. "We need to find out who is digging around," Judge Martinez told his brother-in-law during a secret meeting at Tony's house. "And we need to stop them." Tony Martinez used his connections in the police department to find out about Karoline's investigation. He discovered that she had been talking to Mary Thompson, Robert Chen, and other people who had been in his brother's courtroom. "It is that woman whose hair you cut off," Tony told Judge Martinez. "She is the one causing all this trouble." Judge Martinez was angry, but also worried. "What does she have?" "I do not know yet, but she has been meeting with a private investigator named Danny Rodriguez. They have been asking a lot of questions." Judge Martinez decided to scare Karoline into stopping her investigation. He asked Frank Castellano, the crime boss he owed money to, for help. "I need you to send a message to someone," Judge Martinez said when he met Frank at a secret location. "Make her understand that she should mind her own business." Frank Castellano was a dangerous man who controlled drugs, gambling, and other illegal activities in the city. He had been using Judge Martinez to make legal problems disappear for his criminal organization. He did not want to lose such a useful judge. "Consider it done," Frank said. "What is her name?" Strange things started happening to Karoline after that conversation. She noticed men in dark cars following her when she drove around the city. Someone broke into her apartment twice, but nothing was stolen. They just wanted her to know they had been there. One morning, Karoline went to her car and found that all 4 tires had been cut. There was a note on her windshield that said, "Stop digging or you will be sorry." Danny Rodriguez was also being threatened. Someone spray-painted warnings on the wall of his office. His phone rang at all hours of the night with calls from people who did not speak, they just breathed into the phone. "They are trying to scare us," Danny told Karoline. "But this means we are getting close to something big." The situation got worse when Jennifer Walsh, Karoline's best friend, was arrested on drug charges. Jennifer had been helping Karoline organize evidence and make copies of important documents. Now she was in jail, accused of selling drugs. "This is fake," Jennifer said when Karoline visited her in jail. "I have never used drugs in my life. They planted drugs in my car." Craig Bennett was a public defender who took Jennifer's case. He was an honest lawyer who had been fighting corrupt officials for 15 years. When he looked at the evidence against Jennifer, he knew it was fake. "The police report does not make sense," Craig told Karoline. "The officer who arrested her is Tony Martinez's best friend. This is clearly a setup to get to you." Craig decided to help Karoline's investigation. He had seen too many innocent people hurt by corrupt judges and police officers. He knew that stopping Judge Martinez would help many people. "I have been waiting for someone like you," Craig told Karoline. "Someone brave enough to stand up to these criminals." With Craig's help, Karoline's team was getting stronger. She had Kevin Murphy writing newspaper stories, Maria Santos providing FBI support, and Craig Bennett helping with legal advice. But she also had powerful enemies who were getting more desperate every day. Judge Martinez called a secret meeting with Tony Martinez, Frank Castellano, and Vincent Walsh. They met at a warehouse outside the city where no one could hear them. "This woman is going to destroy all of us," Judge Martinez said. "We need to do something permanent to stop her." "I can make her disappear," Frank Castellano said. "No one will ever find her." But Tony Martinez disagreed. "If she disappears now, it will look suspicious. Too many people know she was investigating you." "Then what do you suggest?" Judge Martinez asked. "We frame her for a serious crime," Tony said. "We make her look like a criminal so no one will believe her evidence." They decided to plant drugs in Karoline's apartment and arrest her, just like they had done to Jennifer Walsh. But they did not know that FBI agent Maria Santos was listening to their conversation through a hidden microphone. Maria called Karoline immediately. "You need to leave your apartment right now. They are coming to arrest you on fake charges." Karoline grabbed her most important evidence and left her apartment just minutes before the police arrived. She was now a fugitive, but she was not going to give up. She was closer than ever to bringing down Judge Martinez and his corrupt network. "They made a big mistake," Karoline said, as she hid in a safe house that Maria Santos had arranged. "Now I know they are desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I am going to use their desperation against them." Karoline Leavitt had been hiding in a safe house for 2 weeks. FBI agent Maria Santos had arranged for her to stay in a small apartment across town where Judge Martinez and his friends could not find her. But Karoline was not just hiding. She was planning the biggest revenge of her life. The Riverside County Bar Association was having their annual gala dinner in 3 weeks. This was the most important event of the year for lawyers and judges in the county. Over 200 people would be there, including the most powerful people in the legal system. Judge Martinez was scheduled to give the main speech about judicial integrity. "This is perfect," Karoline said to Danny Rodriguez when he visited her at the safe house. "He is going to talk about integrity while being the most corrupt judge in the county." Karoline had an idea that would expose Judge Martinez in front of everyone who mattered, but she needed help from someone who understood computers and technology. Brandon Lee was a 25-year-old computer expert who worked for a small tech company. Danny had known him since he was a teenager. When Danny explained what they needed, Brandon was excited to help. "You want me to hack into the hotel's audio and video system?" Brandon asked. "That is illegal. But what Judge Martinez did to you was much worse. I will help you." Brandon spent a week studying the Grand Palace Hotel where the gala would be held. He found out what kind of computers they used for their sound system and projection screens. He learned how to get into their system without anyone knowing. "I can control all the screens and speakers in the ballroom," Brandon told Karoline. "When you give me the signal, I can show whatever you want to 200 people." While Brandon worked on the technical plan, Karoline prepared her evidence. She organized all the recordings, photographs, and documents that proved Judge Martinez was corrupt. She made a video presentation that told the whole story of his crimes. Kevin Murphy, the newspaper reporter, helped her write a speech that would explain everything clearly. "You will only have a few minutes before they try to stop you," Kevin said. "Make every word count." FBI agent Maria Santos made sure that federal agents would be at the gala dinner. "When you expose Judge Martinez, we will be ready to arrest him and his associates immediately," Maria said. The night of the gala dinner arrived. The Grand Palace Hotel was full of the most important lawyers, judges, and politicians in the county. Everyone was dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry. They ate fancy food and drank wine while they talked about legal matters. Judge Martinez was at the main table with his wife, Carmen Martinez. He was wearing his best suit and looked very confident. He had no idea that his life was about to be destroyed. State Supreme Court Justice Catherine Moore was there as a special guest. Attorney General Paul Stevens had flown in from the state capital. These were the people who had the power to remove corrupt judges from office. Karoline was also at the gala, but she looked very different. She wore a long black dress and a beautiful silk scarf that covered her short hair. She had used makeup to change her appearance so Judge Martinez would not recognize her. She sat at a table in the back of the room with Danny Rodriguez. Judge Martinez walked to the podium at 8 o'clock to give his speech. The room became quiet as he began to talk. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Martinez said in his loud voice, "tonight I want to talk to you about the importance of judicial integrity. As judges, we must always remember that we serve the people and the law, not ourselves." Karoline almost laughed when she heard these words. She sent a text message to Brandon Lee, who was waiting in a van outside the hotel. "Start the show," the message said. Judge Martinez continued his speech. "We must never use our power for personal gain. We must treat all people fairly regardless of their race, gender, or social status." That was when the screens around the ballroom suddenly changed. Instead of showing Judge Martinez's speech, they began showing secret video recordings of him, taking money from Vincent Walsh. The audience gasped when they saw Judge Martinez on the screen, counting cash and putting it in his desk drawer. His voice could be heard clearly saying, "This case will go exactly the way you want it to go." Judge Martinez stopped talking and looked around the room in shock. He did not understand what was happening. The screens then showed recordings of Judge Martinez at Murphy's Tavern, drinking beer and bragging about his power. "I can do whatever I want in my courtroom," his voice said through the speakers. "These people think they have rights, but I decide what rights they have." More evidence appeared on the screens. There were photographs of secret meetings between Judge Martinez and Frank Castellano, the crime boss. There were bank records showing bribes. There were court transcripts showing how he treated women and minorities unfairly. The audience was shocked. Supreme Court Justice Catherine Moore stood up and stared at the screens. Attorney General Paul Stevens was taking notes on everything. He saw. Judge Martinez tried to speak, but no one was listening to him anymore. Everyone was watching the evidence of his crimes playing on the screens around the room. Then Amanda Foster, the prosecutor who had been having an affair with Judge Martinez, appeared on the screens. She was giving him secret information about criminal cases. "Here are the files for next week's cases," she said in the recording. "Make sure you rule the way we discussed." The final piece of evidence was the security camera video from the courtroom on the day Judge Martinez cut off Karoline's hair. The entire room watched as the judge forced her to the floor and shaved her head while she cried and begged him to stop. When the video ended, the room was completely silent. Then Karoline stood up and walked to the front of the room. She removed her scarf and showed her short hair to everyone. "My name is Karoline Leavitt," she said in a clear, strong voice. 6 months ago, Judge Martinez humiliated me in his courtroom because I dared to speak up for justice. Tonight, justice speaks for itself. Karoline continued her speech as Judge Martinez stood frozen at the podium. "What you have seen tonight is proof that Judge Martinez has been corrupt for 15 years. He has taken bribes, worked with criminals, and abused his power to hurt innocent people." She pointed to Judge Martinez. "This man is not a judge. He is a criminal who has been hiding behind a black robe. He has betrayed every oath he took and destroyed the trust that people place in our legal system." The audience began to stand and applaud. Even other judges were clapping for Karoline's courage. FBI agents led by Maria Santos entered the ballroom. They walked straight to Judge Martinez and placed him under arrest. "Harold Martinez, you are under arrest for corruption, racketeering, and violation of civil rights," Maria said, as she put handcuffs on him. Vincent Walsh tried to leave the room, but more FBI agents were waiting for him. Tony Martinez was arrested in the parking lot. By the end of the night, 17 people connected to the corruption scandal were in custody. Judge Martinez looked at Karoline as the FBI agents led him away. "This is not over," he said. Karoline smiled at him. "Yes, it is. It is completely over." The gala dinner had become the night when justice finally came to Riverside County, and it all started with one woman who refused to let a corrupt judge destroy her without consequences. 6 months after the night at the Grand Palace Hotel, Harold Martinez sat in a small cell at federal prison in California. He wore an orange jumpsuit instead of his black judge's robe. His gray hair had grown longer, and he looked much older than his 60 years. The man who once controlled a courtroom with fear now spent his days mopping floors and washing dishes in the prison kitchen. The federal judge had sentenced Martinez to 25 years in prison for corruption, racketeering, and violating people's civil rights. At his age, it was likely he would die in prison. Vincent Walsh got 15 years for bribing a judge. Tony Martinez lost his job as police captain and received 10 years in prison for helping cover up his brother's crimes. Frank Castellano was sentenced to 30 years for running a criminal organization. Amanda Foster, the prosecutor who had been giving Judge Martinez secret information, lost her law license and received 5 years in prison. 17 other people connected to the corruption scandal also went to jail or lost their jobs. The courthouse where Judge Martinez had once ruled with an iron fist was very different now. Judge Rachel Kim had been appointed to take his place. She was a young, honest woman who believed in treating all people fairly. On her first day, she put up a sign in her courtroom that said, "Justice is blind to race, gender, and wealth." Judge Kim made many changes to how the court operated. She required all court sessions to be recorded. She created a system where people could report unfair treatment without fear of punishment. She also started having monthly meetings where citizens could ask questions about how the court system worked. "We must rebuild trust," Judge Kim said in her first speech to the courthouse staff. "The people of this county deserve judges who serve justice, not themselves." Karoline Leavitt had become famous across the entire country. News stations from New York to California told her story. Magazines wrote articles about her courage. People called her a hero who stood up to corruption when no one else would. But fame was not what Karoline wanted. She wanted to make sure that what happened to her would never happen to anyone else again. 3 months after Judge Martinez was arrested, Karoline was invited to speak to the United States Congress in Washington, D.C. She wore a beautiful blue dress and a silk scarf as she sat at a table in front of senators and representatives. "Honorable members of Congress," Karoline said, "I am here today not as a victim, but as someone who believes our justice system can be better." She told the lawmakers about her experience and about all the other people who had been hurt by Judge Martinez. She explained how corruption in the courts hurt everyone, especially poor people and minorities who could not fight back. "We need stronger laws to watch over judges," Karoline said. "We need ways for people to report bad judges without being afraid. And we need to make sure that judges who break the law go to prison, just like everyone else." The lawmakers were impressed by Karoline's intelligence and passion. Within 6 months, Congress passed the Federal Judicial Accountability Act. This new law created special offices in every state to investigate complaints against judges. It also made it easier to remove corrupt judges from office. Karoline also wrote a book about her experience called Beneath the Gavel. The book told the whole story of her fight against Judge Martinez. It became a bestseller and helped people understand how corruption in the courts could affect their own lives. The money from her book sales, combined with a settlement from Riverside County, gave Karoline enough funds to start the Leavitt Foundation for Judicial Accountability. This organization helped other people who had been hurt by corrupt judges. Every year, thousands of people are treated unfairly by bad judges, Karoline explained to reporters. Most of them do not have the resources to fight back. Our foundation gives them the help they need. The foundation provided free lawyers to people who had been treated unfairly in court. It also created a database of judicial misconduct that helped identify problem judges before they could hurt more people. Jennifer Walsh, Karoline's best friend who had been falsely arrested, became the foundation's first employee. The fake drug Charges against her had been dropped after Judge Martinez was arrested, but the experience had changed her life. "I want to help other people who have been framed by corrupt officials," Jennifer said. "No one should have to go through what we went through." Danny Rodriguez, the private investigator who had helped Karoline from the beginning, opened a new business that specialized in investigating judicial misconduct. He worked with the Leavitt Foundation to expose corrupt judges across the country. Kevin Murphy, the newspaper reporter, won a Pulitzer Prize for his series of articles about the Judge Martinez corruption scandal. He continued to write stories about government corruption and often worked with Karoline's foundation. The impact of Karoline's actions spread far beyond Riverside County. 23 states passed new laws to prevent judicial corruption. Law. Schools across the country began teaching courses about judicial ethics, using Karoline's case as an example of why these laws were important. Mary Thompson, the teacher who had been jailed for wearing jeans to court, got her job back and received compensation for what she had suffered. Robert Chen, the elderly man whose case had been dismissed because of his accent, was able to file his lawsuit again and won a large settlement. All of the people who had been hurt by Judge Martinez were finally getting justice. Karoline decided to go back to school to become a lawyer herself. She studied hard and passed the bar exam on her first try. She opened a small law office that specialized in helping people who had been treated unfairly by the court system. "I know what it feels like to be powerless in a courtroom," Karoline told her first client, a young woman who had been treated badly by a different judge. "But you are not powerless anymore. I will make sure your voice is heard." Karoline's hair had grown back completely now, reaching past her shoulders again. But she still wore scarves to court, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They reminded her of where she had come from and why her work was important. 5 years after the night at the Grand Palace Hotel, Karoline was invited back to the Riverside County Courthouse for a special ceremony. Judge Rachel Kim was dedicating a new courtroom that had been built with money from the corruption settlement. "This courtroom will be called the Leavitt Courtroom for Justice," Judge Kim announced. "It will remind everyone who enters that justice belongs to the people, not to those who wear the robes." As Karoline stood in the new courtroom, she thought about that terrible day when Judge Martinez had cut off her hair. She had been so afraid and helpless then. Now she was a successful lawyer who had changed laws across the country and helped hundreds of people get justice. "Sometimes the worst things that happen to us can become the source of our greatest strength," Karoline said in her speech that day. "Judge Martinez thought he was destroying me, but he actually created his own worst enemy, and in the end, justice always wins."